Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legions of Christ, and I'm a theology professor. This is a podcast on the Star Cross Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 83, and we are covering Lumen Gentium 46 to 47 on the witness of religious, right? So this is the people take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, people like myself, or Dominicans, Benedictines, Jesuits, Franciscans, etc. There's all like dozens and dozens of different communities there, but that's what we're talking about now. So if you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we talked about the church regulating religious life for the purpose of raising it up. Today, we're talking about Jesus as the example for religious to be faithful and persevere. It's mainly paragraph 46, 47, super brief. But let's get into 46. And 46 has three subparagraphs, A, B, C, obviously. A is about religious imitating Jesus, and that's what we should do. B is about the councils, elevating our human nature. And C is about our need to be faithful as religious, right? So I know for me, religious is an hour thing because I'm a religious. I know for probably almost definitely the majority of my audience, you are not religious. So, it's like might be a you thing. So there's different hours in these sense. But anyways, as a side note, there's an interesting thing about how some languages have two different words for us, an hour. One for if the person you're speaking to is included in the hour, and one for if they aren't. But English does not have that. So, anyway, so let's go. Let's start with 46a on imitating Jesus. Religious should carefully keep before their minds the fact that the Church presents Christ to believers and non-believers alike in a striking manner daily through them. The Church portrays Christ in contemplation on the mountain, in his proclamation of the kingdom of God to the multitudes, in healing of the sick and the maimed, in his work of converting sinners to a better life, in his solicitude for youth and his goodness to all men, always obedient to the will of the Father who sent him. Right? So this is the thing. Jesus is the model, but we as religious need to model Jesus for others, right? The church, like there's that famous saying of, Mother Teresa, she's caring for this person, he's really sick, and he's like, and he's like, why are you doing this? I wouldn't do this if I were you. And it's like, well, who is Jesus? Well, and then the end is, if Jesus is anything like you, I want to know him. I want to love him, right? Because we as religious are those ones who model Jesus, right? And then we portray Jesus in various aspects, right? Different religious have different aspects. We talked about here about contemplation on the mountain, proclaiming the kingdom, healing the sick, etc., right? And so different types of religious have different vocations, right? Certain ones are going to spend more time contemplating on the mountain. Certain ones are more hospital orders, teaching orders, etc., right? And as well, different aspects, right? So like my own community, we spend a lot of time, prayer and contemplation, but we're not just prayer and contemplation. We're usually more of the proclamation of the kingdom to the multitudes, and things like that. We do a lot of retreat work and spiritual direction and such. So moving on to 46b, the council's elevating our human nature. So let's read it. All men should take note that the profession of the evangelical councils, though entailing the renunciation of certain values which are to be undoubtedly esteemed, does not detract from a genuine development of the human persons, but rather by its very nature is beneficial to that development. Indeed, the councils voluntarily undertaken to each one's personal vocation contribute a great deal to the purification of heart and spiritual liberty. They continually stir up the fervor of charity, but especially they are able to more fully mold the Christian man to that type of chaste and detached life, which Christ the Lord chose for himself and which his mother also embraced. This is clearly proven by the example of so many holy founders. Let no one think that religious have become strangers to their fellow men or useless citizens of this earthly city by their consecration. For even though it sometimes happens that religious do not directly mingle with their contemporaries, yet in a more profound sense, these same religious are united with them with the heart of Christ and spiritually cooperate with them. In this way, the building up of the earthly city may have its foundation in the Lord and may tend toward him, lest perhaps those who build up this city shall have labored in vain. So there we go. That's this number, right? And it's talking about how these councils, they first seem contrary to human nature, because we think human nature, reproduction, accumulating wealth, doing our own thing, right? But poverty, chastity, and obedience, work with our human nature, help us in our development, contribute to our spiritual liberty, right? I have so much more spiritual liberty because I know those things are taken care of. Because it's not just, hey, I don't have this, that, and the other thing, but also like the community has it and I know it's taken care of. So I don't have to be, constantly worrying, am I going to pay the bills this month? No, it's taken care of by the community. And that's one thing that is very helpful for a lot of us religious where, we do work hard, but we don't have to, you don't have to worry that like, is my work this particular month going to pay the proportion of my bills? No, the whole community works together for that, right? And then we live this attached life like Jesus. I'm not that attached, right? I might be moved somewhere else. I might go here or there, right? Those type of things. And then we have this deep union of heart and mind with Jesus, right? This is working towards the new heavens and new earth, but it's also showing our union with others, right? So in my prayer, I'm united with these people, even if I can't be with them physically, I have that union with them in my prayer, and that prayer helps lead them to that, right? Helps me be united to them in a way that I can't be even if I'm physically present. So moving on to subparagraph C of paragraph 46 here. Just a second here. I'm just changing one of my notes here because I had the wrong note there, but I don't know why. It's like, I don't know why. Sometimes I'm just like, I have to be right, but like these are notes just for me to do this podcast, and they're going to be saved to my computer and probably never looked at again. But anyways, I just changed one of the notes here because I'd accidentally put 46 for both paragraphs today. So I'm changing that to 47. I don't know why. But anyways, we're going to move on to 46C on religious should be faithful. And this is about daily fidelity. Therefore, the Sacred Synod encourage and praise the men and women, brothers and sisters, who in monasteries or in schools and hospitals or in missions adorn the bride of Christ, but their unswerving and humble faithfulness in their chosen consecration and render generous service of all kinds to mankind, right? So we have this faithful fidelity. We need to be faithful every day. It's not so much like, a lot of times it's easy to be faithful in the big things, but it's easy to be, okay, I'm distracted in prayer. Okay, I can easily, I'm in my room right now, I guess when I'm podcasting, I think that my neighbor can hear me if he's in his room. The priest who's beside me, he's like chaplain at school, so he may or may not be in right now. I'm not sure, right? So the other thing is, he can hear me, but nobody else is going to hear me. But, I have permission in my spirit to go ahead with this podcast. So am I faithful in how I'm doing it, right? That's the question, daily fidelity. I'm kind of doing it in a meta way here because I'm thinking about myself at the moment, but that can sometimes be an example of that, right? In that service comes from fidelity, right? It's not like, hey, I go out and serve. No, I've served because of fidelity. So let's talk about 47, the last paragraph, and it's on the need to persevere. As I said, it's quite brief. Let's read it. Let's each of the faithful called to the profession of the evangelical councils, therefore carefully see to it that he persevere and ever grow in the vocation that God has given him. Let him do this for the increased holiness of the church, for the greater glory of the one and undivided Trinity, which in and through Christ is the fount and source of all holiness. So this is kind of, we talked about fidelity in the last one, but here we're talking about perseverance, the long haul, right? And I think sometimes in our vocation, we think of it's a sprint, I got to get going. But really what's most important is the long haul fidelity. Am I faithful 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? It's the example of the priesthood, the example of religious life. Yes, when you're, 17, you're thinking about it, or 20, you're thinking about it. You think about the people who are 25. But as you go through the seminary, you're like, okay, how do I see myself in 30, 40, 50 years? And I look at the priests there, right? I look at the priests who are coming by, who are doing ministry out in the field, right? Those are the examples we have. And that's the same thing with any vocation, right? We have, you're married, you're sure you fall madly in love with this person, but what do you see, 40, 50 years down the road? Do you know couples who are like that, right? Because that's the example for marriage, just like this for religious life. And then obviously, all these vocations come from Jesus, not from ourselves or from our communities, especially religious vocations, but even vocations to marriage. So thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarCross produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one time, monthly, or join the StarCross Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the next paragraph of Lumen Gentium, which is paragraph 48 on the church's call to be lifted up with Jesus, right? That union of the church and Jesus. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. For more information, like playlists for individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X.
Amen.